Hello, folks. Good evening. You're welcome to another edition of Just Banter. And today I am very excited because it's the World Sickle Cell Day. That's tomorrow, actually, it's 19th of June. And I'm excited simply because there's hope on the horizon for sickle cell disease. Growing up, I had two cousins. One of them is actually my best friend, and he suffers from sickle cell. And I could see the pain and the trauma that he went through growing up. And I could also see the pain of his mother in looking after him. The sickle cell disease affects roughly 8 to 10% of people of African descent globally. And people need to talk a bit more about it. People need to be aware. People need to know what to do to prevent it, and in the event that it does happen, how to manage it. Today, I have two fantastic, brilliant beauty and brains in the studio today. I'm going to introduce them one after the other. The first is the founder of the Sickle Cell Society Ireland. Her name is Esther Peppel. And the second, hello Esther, how are you?
Hi, Habib.
It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Habib. It's my pleasure.
It's our pleasure as well. And secondly, we have Dr. Dada Kuriboh. Dr. Dada is the HOD of the University of Port Harcourt Teaching Hospital, Beauty and Brains, like I said earlier on. And also another brilliant doctor, Dr. Tomia Austin. Hello, Dr. Tomia. How are you?
I am well. Hello. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's great to have you guys on today. World Sickle Cell Day.
So Thank you for having us. Hello and good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to start with Esther. Esther, what is the SCSI and why did you start it?
Oh, wow. That's $1 million question. A million euro question.
Million euros.
Yeah, I suppose SCSI, the founding of SCSI, would have come from my own personal experience in Ireland. Coming to Ireland at a time when sickle cell was relatively unknown. And if you like to say, presenting with one of the first 2 cases in the country. And you can imagine, with a condition, number one, you're a minority. Number 2, you have a condition that the majority are very much unaware of. So I had to do a lot of explaining. In fact, I had to read a lot myself because I really had, much clue, even if I had knowledge about sickle cell. But the depth of knowledge I have today, came from my research, you see. So it was all about advocating for services, trying to re-educate healthcare staff at every point in time. And, even for basic, things we might access to healthcare, like we really never had that. So it was more around trying to see change for sickle cell patients in Ireland and, a better improved access to healthcare that's
healthcare for sickle cell patients.
For sickle cell patients that, brought about the founding of SCSI. But just to note that SCSI started, as a group of, we were a group of parents. What happened was I did an initial research when I studied a master's in social work. This was so many years ago, like maybe 16 years ago, thereabouts, between those years. And I explored the experiences of African parents living with children with sickle cell in Ireland. So most of the parents I interviewed were the initial, until today, they are still part of the SCSI, the society. They were the initial founding members of SCSI.
So
yeah, so we started out as a support group, supporting each other. Yes.
So it must have been pretty challenging. How did you find each other?
How did we find each other?
Yeah.
Initially, when I started accessing Crumlin, we didn't have a specialist in Crumlin. Like nobody knew what sickle cell was. I recall the very first day, because my daughter was always sick and she had late diagnosis. So nobody knew what was going on with her. And I now recall, I said, listen, I'm AS. Could you check if she has any form of a sickle gene? And everybody was like, what is that? What do you mean? So I started explaining.
Seriously?
Yes. It took them time to even carry out that test for my daughter. You understand?
That's amazing.
Yes. So I suppose it was from that point. Then we didn't have the specialist center we have or the consultants we have now, because sickle cell was only, if you want to say, migrated into Ireland. It was one other lady and myself I knew. She was the second family I met in Crumlin at the time, Children's Hospital. And, we started talking about it, like, what do we do? How do we get knowledge out there? The child I'm talking about, she's over 20 now. So you can imagine, like, I can't even remember.
That's amazing.
Yes, exactly. So, how I met the families, that participated in my study, I met them as parents attending the service. So when we began to have more families attending, yourself, like everybody would just sit down in the waiting area like a stranger.
Yeah.
I never knew what they were attending for because, like I said, we never had a specialist service. It was more of, the general hemoglobinopathies. Dr. Kuriboh can explain, what that means, Yeah. It was just a general, area where they see, patients with blood disorder who were attending at the time. So you wouldn't know who was attending and what they were attending for. And because at the time, again, a lot of people want to keep their medical history to themselves, which is something that still happens until today.
Oh, yes.
You understand? It was difficult to know what the next patient was attending the service for. But being who I am till tomorrow, I would take the first step to say, oh, sorry, my name is Esther. My child has sickle cell. Even at that, their children had sickle cell, but like, you see, they wouldn't say it straight away. And when you begin to say it, it would be like, oh, you keep your own story to yourself. And, so there was this whole thing about shame disclosure. If you mentioned, what was, your situation, maybe somebody else might hear it, or maybe the community might start, making a jest out of it or out of your child. So there was that whole scenario. I would have sensed that initially, but somehow I kept pushing and pushing until I started breaking those grounds of silence, with families and patients. And for me, to make a change, I felt I had to do just more than talking to my fellow parents, and it was to go back to college, get more knowledge, and maybe go into a profession that would, give me a pathway towards making the change I want to make in the community. So this was how, I kicked off my study and, the research.
That's pretty interesting. I'll come back to you on the issue of, how you cope and all that. First, I'll go to Dr. Dada. And Dr. Dada, you live in Nigeria, Port Harcourt precisely. And Esther mentioned something earlier on. Yes, you have the issue of privileged information when it comes to your medical records and all that, but there seems to be a trend of stigmatization in Africa generally, when a child or anybody has an illness of some sort. Could that be responsible for why, the sickle cell disease is not talked about enough?
Yes, I would say so. Like before I met Esther, we used to have these conversations where we used to ask ourselves as medical personnel that we don't have a lot of people coming out to talk about sickle cell anemia. Now, when we say people talking about sickle cell anemia, we're talking about people in the limelight, like celebrities, politicians, the media, because people need to be able to relate to sickle cell anemia. If you have a medical personnel trying to give awareness about a certain condition, yes, that's all well and good, but people will tend to relate well or better to that scenario if they can see, people they can relate to, like
Yeah.
people they know from, the media, public figures. It humanizes the face of that. And like you said, people don't understand a lot about sickle cell. And with it goes stigmatization. So you still have a lot of people. I'll give you an example. In the very, very old days, there used to be something called abiku, that is, the child comes and the child goes. Because of poor health care in those days, healthcare is better now, it's not perfect, but then you had children who were born, and because at the younger age in life, they tend to have lots of malaria in our environment, and that precipitates, their crisis. So especially when they are below the age of 5, they tend to fall sick a lot. And a lot of them, maybe they were not diagnosed or, taken to proper facility and so on. So you had situations where a woman will give birth, and because it's a genetic disease, sometimes more than one child in the family will get affected and may die. And so they used to call it, the child that comes and goes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because they didn't understand what was happening. And that is what has portrayed over generations, adding to the stigma of that disease. In 2020, we are today, there are still some people that believe that sickle cell patients cannot live till adulthood. There's still some people that believe that, once they get to 21, they're going to die. And it's a very, very, terrible myth that we keep talking about over and over and over, to tell people that, look, sickle cell is not a death sentence. In as much as we try to, raise campaigns, awareness for people to prevent bringing more children with sickle cell into the world. However, those living with sickle cell, there are so many people living with sickle cell going about their normal lives. Nigeria even has the oldest person living with sickle cell, and this is what we try to tell people. I think she was 93 as of last World Sickle Cell Day, thereabouts. Yes, exactly. Yes, and she's lived her life to the full. She's had her children, all that, and this is what we try to portray to people who have children or who have relatives or who are living with sickle cell anemia. In as much as someone has sickle cell anemia, the person should not be stigmatized, because the stigma is really, really an issue that we need to work on.
Wow. Because I remember growing up, I used to, what I used to hear all the time was the early death rates, for people that had the sickle cell disease and all that. So I'll go to Dr. Tomia, from there. So Dr. Tomia, it's stated that 8 to 10% of African Americans have the sickle cell disease. How long has there been awareness about the sickle cell disease in the United States?
Oh, I would say we preach the 19, oh God, don't let me say the wrong year, but the awareness has been for sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait is pretty constant. It's just the new pharmaceuticals that have been developed in the past 30 years, especially the one that was accidentally developed from cancer to treat sickle cell disease, is making the awareness increase. And I would correlate that directly to the fact that now there's funds available via the pharmas to assist the awareness in the United States.
When you say accidental, what do you mean by accidental?
I am a researcher, but so maybe Dr. Dada can assist me. Hydroxyurea, I believe it is, was originally developed as a cancer drug.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there were findings to show that it was effective in sickle cell disease patients. So it was not
in sickle cell.
Yes. It wasn't developed for sickle cell, but we stumbled upon it and it has been beneficial. And since this, in the last 10, 20 years, there have been a number of other drugs coming to market, clinical trials and so on, that are actually, making the horizon brighter as far as therapies and treatments. But the issues remain. And I would say that stigma that you speak of, even the ignorance, we in the United States, we call it the street committee. It's an informal information that may or may not be riddled in fact. So there's a lot of misconception. And our organization for the last 10 years has been focused primarily on trait education, because for the numbers of sickle cell in the United States are right around 90 to 100,000, but the numbers of sickle cell trait, I'm sorry, did I say that wrong? Disease is 100,000, but trait is right around 4 million. And then the misconceptions is that this is only something that affects people. Well, what it said is it affects African Americans, when in fact it does affect people of African descent, but we also know that they're Caucasian,
Arabs,
absolutely. So virtually anyone could have trait. We're talking about a blood condition as opposed to a skin color condition, but that disparity population, those people with brown skin, the social determinants of health leave us in disparity populations across the board, and it's not different in the sickle cell realm as well. And then sickle cell trait, there's the stigma there as well, as far as professions and access to work, but also in the athletic space. When people exert, that's where sickle cell trait can be symptomatic, even though textbooks will say sickle cell trait is asymptomatic. Our mission is to empower families globally, delivering life-saving sickle cell education, which is inclusive of sickle cell trait education, because of the family planning fact that 2 people with trait are likely 25% chance to make a person with sickle cell disease. And then the cycle continues, because a person with sickle cell disease will, at the very least, have a child with sickle cell trait. So I've met parents who say, I didn't know, my husband didn't know, had we known, we might have done things differently. I've also met people who say they would never have done things differently, but they would have liked to have known what the blood condition that they had would mean to a child that they had. So that is the position that we take, to educate on all realms, the stigma, the exertion. Absolutely, it is not a death sentence. Absolutely, it is not a reason why you should not be employable if you desire so, and your body desires so. So we highlight the movers and shakers that are doing things with sickle cell, but we also absolutely have to recognize and make change in the area of stigma.
So Esther, let me ask you a question, and don't laugh too hard over this, okay?
Okay.
Now, in terms of awareness, were you aware, or did you know that there was a chance that could happen? And if you were aware, was it a case of love trumped the issue of, sickle cell? And you decided that, well, regardless, I'm going to do it anyways, and take my chances?
I suppose I wouldn't say it was a case of chance. It was more of a case of failure in in Nigeria's, medical advancement. So I was aware.
Wait first. Would you have just let's answer that one first. Would you have given up on it if you had known it was going to happen? Is it a case of love would have made you say, you know what, I will take that chance?
I suppose my perspective until today is that as far as one is very informed or fully informed, you understand, and you're making an informed decision, so you're ready and you're prepared. You know what your expectations are. And it's a situation where, because listen, Abib, I have two beautiful daughters with sickle cell. Even if they have sickle cell, it doesn't mean that I'm going to eradicate them or banish them from the face of the earth.
Definitely
That's impossible.
not.
You understand? So I love a person with sickle cell. I love sickle cell myself. But the only thing I want to see is what we have been fighting for. America has been fighting over 100 years. We have been fighting in Nigeria. We have the highest burden. Over 40 million Nigerians are directly affected by sickle cell. In Ireland, there is a growing concern in pediatric sickle cell. Sickle cell affects 7% of the world's population, and we have the highest burden in Africa, almost 2.5% of that burden. So
that's massive.
How are we going to eradicate people with sickle cell? Who says people with sickle cell can't be human beings?
No, you can't have life without. You can't have life without ailments.
Why would I even
have life without ailments? Yeah.
Why would I even change the narrative of, hey, I can't? No. If services are improved, people have informed decision. It's based, on whatever they decide. They can choose to leave the relationship, or they can choose to stay and work towards it. Other countries have gone to the extent of having, where you can have, a test. I don't want to go into the clinical aspect of this, like Dada can go into that. That's why she's here, where you can know whether or not you're having a child with sickle cell, and you can make a choice. So you can select your pregnancy, if I can put it that way. So, but then all these are practices that various countries would have to legitimize so that people can either have access. So as it is for sickle cell, we're still fighting for what I call our basic needs or our basic rights. We haven't even started talking about the broader issues. You understand? So
can you tell us some of those? Can you tell us some of those? Can you tell us some of those issues? Can you tell us some of those issues? Can you tell us some of those issues you mentioned? Can you mention a few of those issues that you're talking about?
The broader issues. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Just two or three.
I talked about we're still battling for what our basic right is. When I talk about basic rights, I talk about access to social services. If you know the Maslow, hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Your basic need, the most basic need, shelter, food to eat, and all of that. We're still battling. We're at that level globally. I'm not speaking for Ireland now on my own.
Yeah.
The most form of, natural treatment for sickle cell anyone can have is water. Some countries don't. Yes. Some you stay hydrated to help your red blood cells, have enough oxygen and free flow. Some countries don't even have clean water enough for people with sickle cell. I'm not talking about access to resources for medicine. I'm not talking about precision medicine. Dr. Austin talked about hydroxyurea not being, precision medicine for sickle cell. I'm not even talking about that. Research is way behind compared to other conditions that affect the majority, the population or race. So we're still battling.
Dr. Dada, in Nigeria has the largest, population in sub-Saharan Africa, and we do have, like Esther said, about 40 million Nigerians, either directly affected or indirectly affected by the sickle cell disease. What are we doing as a country, as a people, in terms of funding for research and then the manpower for research as well? Hello?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. I think there was a break. Yeah.
Okay. Did you catch me or did you lose me there? Did you hear the question?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I lost you at Nigeria and 40 million.
Yeah. Okay. So I said Nigeria. Yeah, we have 40 million people, and 40 million people affected directly or indirectly by the sickle cell disease. What are we doing
Yeah.
in terms of funding and in terms of manpower for research into the sickle cell disease?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Now, when we say 40 million people, because if you look, it could actually be more than that. Because if you're looking at the percentage of people who are carriers of the traits for sickle cell,
Yeah,
we have a
it's up.
carrier rate of up to 25%. And Nigeria right now has a population of 200 million or more. So you're talking of at least 50 million people who have the traits, who are carriers of the trait for sickle cell anemia. And we have about 2 to 3% of our population affected by sickle cell disease. Now, you have a situation where we have a structure, or rather, we do not have a structure in place for taking care of people who have sickle cell anemia. Now, one of the things we usually talk about is there are a lot of take HIV, for example.
Yeah.
There's a lot of funding for something like HIV. And yes, some people, HIV is more of, it's an acquired disease, right? And then you could add a social aspect to it in terms of how the infection is gotten. But people who have sickle cell anemia, we're talking about a genetic disease. That's one. We're talking about a country where we carry the highest burden in the world. Therefore, we should be the ones shouting, look at us. We have sickle cell anemia.
It should be at the
It is
forefront.
unfortunate that everything that we know, yes, we should be at the forefront when we're talking about research into sickle cell anemia, breakthrough in research about sickle cell anemia. We should be in the forefront. Nigeria should be there. But we seem to have a laid back attitude. Now, let me give you an example. If you take a microphone and walk down the street, just pick any random street and ask 10 people, do you know what your genotype is? Probably one person would know. That's how bad it is. That is how bad it is. I've been in this um, campaigns for sickle cell anemia for maybe about 10 years, roughly thereabout. And it's amazing that every year, we go about doing these campaigns about this period. Sometimes we have 2 to 3 programs a year where we do outreaches, like she was talking about, Dr. Tomia was talking about trait education. You cannot overemphasize the importance of that, because a lot of people, a lot of adults do not know their genotype. Some people will be hearing the word genotype for the first time when they're bringing their child who is ill to the hospital. And then there are some people who maybe have heard of genotype, because we are also advocating, like, for example, before you get into secondary school, before you get into the university, such testing should be done. But we are also seeing that sometimes this testing is done and the mother does not educate the child or does not inform the child of what the results are. So you have maybe an 11-year-old who is in secondary school and who would have done the genotype test before entering that school, but she doesn't know what her genotype is. And probably if you ask the mother also doesn't even know what the genotype is, because it was just done like routine before entering school and they did not pay attention to it. So the truth of the matter is that Nigeria is behind in terms of research for sickle cell anemia. Everything we know about sickle cell anemia comes from what we learned from the Western countries. There have been a couple of drugs, like orphan drugs, that they tried to produce here, but somewhere they had issues and that was not really sustained, and therefore it's not a lot of people, in fact, it's not available right now. That's just the summary. So in terms of awareness, we are behind a lot of people. And we're talking about, okay, so if I say pick a random street, I'm talking about like the urban area, like I
I
stay in
get
Port
you. Yeah.
Harcourt. So what is
Would medical
happening?
health
What
records?
is happening in the rural areas?
Would medical health records
Sorry?
help? Would medical health records make a difference in that?
Well, when you talk about medical health records, we also have poor health seeking behavior. So
Okay.
if you're talking about medical records, you're talking about people who routinely go to the hospital even when they're not ill, and then these records are on file, and and so on and so forth. So that doesn't seem to be the play here. Yes, pre-employment, preschool, premarital testing is being advocated. And I must admit that this is being done more frequently. There are some people that are just coming to the hospital because they want to get tested, because they want to get married, or because
Yeah.
they're going into school. So it is increasing, but we are nowhere near the level we should be as a country who is, in the world, one of the most one of the countries with the highest numbers of people living with sickle cell anemia.
So the sociocultural issues are, something to really, really work on. Then,
Yes, yes.
Dr. Tomia, what is for a lot of people, they don't even know they have the disease in the first place, like Dr. Dada has just said. Maybe we could use this opportunity to inform them first. What is the difference between the trait and the actual disease?
It's just a simple genetic disease. You have two copies of the trait. You've received the abnormal hemoglobin from each parent. For trait, you've received it from one parent, so you carry one copy.
Okay.
However, that is the very basic. And again, I qualify my statements and defer to Dr. Dada because I am a researcher and not a clinician.
Okay.
However, the even if you don't have sickle cell, there is a genotype for you as well. And we at the As One Foundation, we have genotype education in the form of our T-shirts. Tomorrow we're doing a genotype jam just to make it common and fun and
Okay.
not heavy, because I agree totally. And to speak off subject just a little, here in the United States, and it's certainly reached global range, the whole Black Lives
Black Lives Matter. Yeah.
Matter. This is happening the way that it's happening now because others other than Black people are starting to wake up and care and be vocal. We use the term the non-affected. When you start to see real penetration as far as breaking through when you get the non-affected to care. And
Oh yeah.
we often use the breast cancer example to visualize, to demonstrate what we're talking about. Here in the United States, you have the National Football League. They're wearing pink shoes and pink gloves and pink balls, and men are running races with pink bras. They may never develop breast cancer, but they are demonstrating
But yeah,
care about it. The
that's just showing their support for it.
Yes, and so when you can stretch beyond the population and get the attention of the non-affected, that is a strategy that has worked in other chronic diseases, and that's a strategy that we're trying. And I say let's just try everything. I feel the frustration. I feel the I guess I'll just say frustration, because I believe it's something we should all care about. It's something that we should be all talking about. But I eat and drink and sleep it, and others don't. And how do you build that care in others so that you establish this universal education where even a 2-year-old little non-Black person knows what sickle cell is and is able to talk about it? they can talk about cancer. They can talk about heart disease. They can know daddy needs to lower his stress. Daddy needs to exercise. That is how our messages, you know, I believe will advance. We care about it. It's in our communities. It's in our homes. It's amongst people that we care about. But we need others to care. And unfortunately, horrible things have had to happen in order for the Black Lives Matter campaign to have reached the fever pitch that it's reached. And we know the horrible things that are happening in our own community as it relates to sickle cell disease and the treatment in the ERs, and, you know, the not being heard, and the stigmatization of their drug seekers, and they're lazy, you know, things you just hear over and over. But I guess the mystery for me is how to get the non-affected to care.
Yeah. So for us as a people, what I realize is that we love entertainment more than any other thing. You know, if you guys were musicians, I'm sure we'll have maybe about 3,000, 4,000 people watching this right now live, you know. Yeah. And I noticed, Esther, that the Sickle Cell Society Ireland has realized that, you know, a little while ago. So you guys have been, you know, doing quite a few events. You know, what kind of events are you doing, you know, going forward?
I suppose I agree with what Dr. Tommy and Dr. Kuriboh, you know, has said that it's important for us to reach out to the sickle cell community. And if we can also reach out to, you know, celebrities and all of that, it then attract more popular attention than, you know, the way, which has been our strategy. But, you know, being in Ireland, it took us a while to gather the momentum that we have gathered, particularly in the last 7 or 8 years, you know, doing these events we run each year. And what we do for this event, we use the fashion show and so many other, you know, activities to raise awareness. It's called Colors of Sickle Cell. It's a project to express, you know, a sickle cell story through various empowering activities. And these activities are fashion show, and fashion show means something to us or to any sickle cell patient out there. If you know about sickle cell patients, people stereotype them because of how, you know, their body image looks because of their, you know, constant bout of pains and all of that. So some patients would have, you know, large tummy, and, you know, they wouldn't grow very well because of the, you know, ongoing crisis, and that affects, you know, the color of their eyes and all of that. So when we use fashion show, we use fashion to tell a story of, it really doesn't matter how you look. You understand? You can still look beautiful in yourself. So we've had, you know, our children or young people with sickle cell even participating in these shows over the years, as much as the non-affected population, the Irish community, the Polish community, you know, people from Eastern Europe, and, you know, a large pool of volunteers, like you won't believe it, you know. So we're sort of using that strategy to get the knowledge out there. To me, it's amazing when I watch the pool of people that, you know, work with us or volunteer with us during, you know, World Sickle Cell Day every year, that they are non-sickle cell population. Most of them,
I mean, they will be the one to drive it because they are more. The numbers are more on that side, you know.
Exactly. So we have all these designers that are maybe from, you know, the local Irish community, you know, because of their understanding of what we go through. They dedicate their time, the makeup artists, the photographers, the videographers. I want to use this opportunity to say thank you to all of you. They dedicate their time to come out from boot camp, rehearsals, and everything to the main show. That's just one part of it. Then again, we use music. Music can bring harmony. You know, sometimes people are, you know, when you're down with a condition, you're very low in your mood. and music, through music, I can feel alive again. So we use music. That is why we always have performing artists. We use comedy. Comedy can add humor to life. We use drama. We use drama to tell our stories so that people can understand what we go through and how we cope and the lack of understanding. So this is actually what we do every year. It's just a part of the events. Then, of course, we have the education and awareness bits where we have, one of the hematologists or any medical person working with sickle cell speaking about the condition or the impacts. The last time we raised awareness for mental health, because we know a lot of our community are beginning to be impacted by, mental health. So we had somebody, from the psychiatric department to speak about mental health and how it relates to sickle cell. So this is the kind of awareness, strategies we're using to get the non-affected community and to see how far we can raise awareness. Just to announce that this year we've gone the extra length to get Richard Mofe-Damijo.
Oh, that's fantastic.
He's coming on our event on Saturday. He is a legend. Globally, he's very well known. He's, one of Nigeria's biggest, celebrity actors.
Yeah.
So
one of our guests agrees with you. She's saying inclusiveness of others is essential. So yes, you do need to have the likes of, influencers. I think that's the new word now. To drive, to drive awareness, towards that. So talking of pain, because when you mentioned pain earlier on, you brought back those memories again. So I'll give this question to Dr. Dada because you're the clinician. We have the COVID-19 pandemic right now, and some of the symptoms, of somebody that's really ill with the COVID-19 is a chest infection. But for the sickle cell, you also have the acute chest syndrome. Mm-hmm. Are there any similarities between the two?
Oh, yes. They are quite similar, and they would give, similar symptoms. In both cases, the affected person may have fever. In both cases, the affected person may have cough. In both cases, the affected person may have difficulty in breathing. And, right now in this pandemic, if anybody comes with cough and fever, before you say Jack, you'll be wondering if the person has
the COVID-19.
You'll be wondering if the person has, COVID-19. Yeah. However, we know that our patients with sickle cell anemia could also be having an acute chest syndrome. So what it is one, the person, the affected sickle cell carrier and sickle cell patient has to seek help on time. Because if it is COVID or if it is acute chest syndrome, both of them have better outcomes when medical help is sought for.
Yeah, the earlier you get there, the better for you.
Yes, exactly. And now the onus now lies on the clinician, the doctor attending to that patient, to carry out investigations, examine the patient and carry out investigations to find out if this person does have acute chest syndrome or COVID-19. In my center, what we try to do is, while the patient comes in, if the patient presents like this, what we try to do is, first of all, the samples are going to be taken for the COVID-19 screening. In the meantime, the patient is kept somewhere in a holding area, and then we're going to treat based on what we have on, like for the chest x-rays, the clinical findings, if we feel it is acute chest syndrome or if we feel it is COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Yes, exactly. So the thing is it's important to be able to differentiate, because it's not going to be proper, it's not going to be ideal to keep a patient who has an acute chest syndrome in the isolation where, COVID-19
People
patient, because
infected with COVID-19,
now
yeah.
it's exposing that patient to the risk of infection. So it's for us out there, especially as medical personnel, to know that these two disorders will present similarly, and also for those who are affected to seek help on time.
All right. So, Dr. Tobia, you have bone marrow research, stem cell research. What are the numbers looking like? What's the hope?
What was the first part? I missed the first part.
I said you have stem cell research, you have bone marrow research. What are the numbers like? What's the hope, for sufferers of sickle cell disease?
Well, I would say the hope is as good as the risk, and both are very risky. I actually do know several who have entered into the process, some unsuccessfully. And
When you say unsuccessfully, sorry, what does that mean?
The bone marrow transplant process did not work.
All right, but they survived it.
They did survive. And
okay.
Unfortunately, I'm aware of one individual who did not survive.
Oh, wow.
So there is just extreme risks associated. And then there's also cost associated. So it is not an immediate, easily accessible go-to, but it's promising. And these are the sentiments that are expressed each time we gather. Is the accessibility, whether it should be taking place in a certain age group, who should not even think about it, all of these things. So I say the hope is as good as the risk. That is my assessment. It's another thing, and I see issues associated with sickle cell as like an octopus on steroids with multiple tentacles, multiple ways to address it. It's not just the stem cell, it's education, it's stigma removal, it is provision, funding, hydration, all of it. We can strike this at many points and make a difference, but the strike, needs to come from many points.
So the strategy has to be worked upon, and maybe we need to have more people that are fully hands-on, working towards raising those funds, then driving the awareness. And that brings it back to Esther. So for you, Esther, you're a mom, you work full-time, you're running this sickle cell society. How do you cope? How do you do all this? How do you juggle so many balls at the same time?
Oh my days.
She's a woman.
She's a superwoman.
Yeah, she's a woman.
How do you manage all that? How do you run all those things, simultaneously? That's a lot to do.
You don't want to know. This morning I woke up like literally mentally exhausted because you're trying to get out and go to work, before 9 a.m. and you may have, like, Tomia is in the other part of the world. You may have Tomia to connect to and 5 other Tomias and Dada and a million emails and messages all over the platform. And sometimes it's like, I'm going crazy. I'll speak to some of my team members. I'm like, I'm actually going to go crazy. The only thing remaining was for me to just.
They said you're a superwoman, so you won't go crazy. So.
I have my children. Like, I've had them from the word go, and I've been in this business, working, studying, doing this advocacy. Ask me, I really don't know how I do this. Just that maybe I may not have the same amount of hours of sleep you have, or somebody else's would have. I may not remember I have to even eat well sometimes because, like, I'm always working on the go. Like, I'm like a walking machine. So it's difficult. I really can't say, Habib. Let me give you an example. Like, at times when my children are in hospital, or particularly my older daughter who is more severe, you know, I appear in my office the same way I'm looking right now. Nobody knows actually I've been sleeping in the hospital on the floor for how many days, taking a clean in the morning and running to work. Do you understand? And I have the children as well to worry about. So if you ask me, honestly, I don't know. But somehow God has given me strength, and I believe in God's grace, and I hold onto that grace and I keep pushing. And
one of the viewers is taking a crack at me. She's saying that delegation and using your support can be helpful. So my support for I don't know, can anybody tell me how I can be of support, you know, under the circumstances?
Of course, you've been very helpful.
Thank
in saying this, you're asking me a personal question, but Habib, don't forget, you're doing your part to support SCSI. So many other people are doing their part to support SCSI. You understand?
Yeah.
But because you're the main contact person, a million other people want to get to you direct attention.
Yeah.
If you don't have that time, some people might go off saying, oh, she's so arrogant, or she doesn't respond to, everybody wants a piece of the cake. So it's very difficult to explain to people that, listen, I can't take this call, or I can't personally respond to this person, or I can't do this. You understand? So definitely delegation is there. Everybody is doing what they can.
Yeah.
However, many times you have to be at the forefront of doing a lot of other things. It may not even be the basic things, but things that are beyond just the basics.
Superwoman. Dr. Dada.
Yes, I mean,
I know that, you know, for most women, you know, they're naturally born project managers. They're able to handle so many things at the same time, you know, a career, kids, and everything. They run the country. They run everything. I keep saying that, you know, you educate a female child, and you educated a nation. I'm a strong supporter of educating, you know, female children especially, and we have a lot of issues up north in Nigeria as well in terms of education for the female child. Education is the key. You have the STEM education, you know, and all that. There needs to be financing for education, but first, if you don't have good health, you can't even study. So we need to talk to the government. We need to start driving awareness on how to start raising money for healthcare in Nigeria. We need to restructure the healthcare in Nigeria. But I've not seen the Nigerian Medical Association particularly, you know, standing up and advocating for this financing. How can you have less than 10% of a budget of a country for education, for healthcare? As a matter of fact, if you combine healthcare and education, you still have
education. Yes.
So how do you manage, you know, your teaching hospital, for instance?
Habib, you know, it's unfortunately what you're saying are hard facts that we can't deny. And you know, when this COVID-19 pandemic started, and you know, there was all that scare, what a lot of us were thinking was that maybe the pandemic was going to have its positive side in terms of, you know, the way our country goes about attitude, if I may use that word, to education and then to healthcare. Now, it's not that the people at the helm of affairs don't know the importance of education and healthcare, because if they don't know, how come a lot of their children are studying abroad? If they do not know the importance of healthcare, before the pandemic, at any given slight headache, those with affluence will fly out of the country.
Yeah, they're on a plane and they're out. Yeah.
Yes. So now with the pandemic, we're thinking, okay, now borders are shut, everybody should stay where they are and then attend to their own issues. So we were thinking that this was going to bring about the much needed change to the healthcare.
Yeah.
As regards the Nigerian Medical Association, they have been playing their part, and we know that with regards to education, we have associations like the ASU, the Lecturers Union. Those associations have been playing their part in terms of trying to get the government to increase, the percentage of the budgets that is, given to
Allocated. Yeah,
healthcare.
to
Yes,
healthcare.
allocated to healthcare and education. Because once these two sectors are taken care of, then we're going to see a dramatic change in our country. But for now, unfortunately, we are 3 months into the pandemic. The changes that we thought were going to come with the pandemic, because now everybody is here and we have to work on our facilities to give better health care to our
Yeah.
people, those changes are not yet visible. Those changes have not yet come.
They don't
So
even
we
look.
still
They
have,
don't even look like it's possible at this rate.
it doesn't even look possible. It doesn't even look possible. So it's still, we're still way behind. It's still very much of a struggle. But I have this mantra. And I guess that's why Esther and I, we connected at some point, because I have the mantra of do what you can where you are.
With what you have.
Yes, with what you have. Make the noise where you are. Because if we keep waiting for the government, I can't even say what is going
Oh
to
yeah.
happen.
Oh
So
yeah.
we are trying to do what we can where we are. It's not that we are not pushing for the government to make changes. That is still going on. But we cannot also fold our arms and say the government isn't doing this, so nothing is working. So in
Yeah.
our own little corner, we have to do what we can to get things going until hopefully, and we have to be hopeful, because where there's life, there's hope, so they say. So
Yeah.
we
So
have
is
to
that.
be
Yeah.
hopeful until things start to turn around with regards to health and education in our country.
Okay. So, in parting shots, Dr. Tomia, what would you say to people? A lot of people don't know the As One Foundation, as in the viewers mostly on this show. Can you tell us a little something about the As One Foundation and how they can reach you if they need to send you a message, that kind of stuff?
So the As One Foundation can be found at our website, which is asonefoundation.org, all spelled out. As I said, our mission is to empower families globally, delivering life-saving sickle cell education. And we do this through presentations, live and virtual research, and assisting community-based organizations as well. We are in the throes of a month-long campaign. We are, trying to make others care about sickle cell. So we have a month-long sickle what with the question mark bingo game.
Yeah.
And you can find out about that. And then we also have tomorrow it's a genotype jam, and the website is genotypejam.com.
Brilliant.
It's also free. And it's a dance party for sickle cell. We call it the Club Quarantine with a sickle cell twist. And all social media platforms, As One Foundation, and keep up with us, follow us, we'll follow you back. And we just believe that sickle cell education is not comprehensive if it does not include sickle cell trait education.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to take it the other way around rather than, the way you started before. So I'm going to go back to Dr. Dada now and then the closing statement from Esther. So Dr. Dada, your message to our people. They need to hear something.
So our message is usually for people to know their genotype, because for us that is like
That's the
the
key.
very yes, that
Yeah.
is like the very minimum basic that is required.
Yeah.
And usually, like when we go on our health campaigns, our sickle cell awareness campaigns, we have flyers on our t-shirts, the back of the t-shirts. What is your genotype? Because knowing the genotype is going to go a long way in
Yeah.
educating people about sickle cell. We should not have a lot of people ignorant about sickle cell anymore. We should
Yeah.
have people who are aware of their genotype, and like Esther said, if people are aware of their genotype, they can go ahead and make informed choices. So yes, I am AS and my spouse is AS and we're going ahead, we are ready for this. Or no, I don't want to do this. The problem is that a lot of people even aren't even there yet because they did not know their genotype in the first place.
In the
So
first
that's the
place.
first thing. We must take that message down to the grassroots that you must know your genotype.
Okay,
And it's
that's
never
brilliant.
too late to check. Yeah.
If there's any way from radio.com can help, please let us know, and we're ready to follow up on that. At a moment's notice, same thing goes for the As One Foundation. For the Sickle Cell Society of Ireland, you're having an event on Saturday, you said. Can you tell us about it and how we can all, join or tap into it and all that? Have fun.
I suppose the World Sickle Cell Day is globally celebrated on the 19th, but people can also, extend the activities to happen in and around the 19th. So for that reason, it was more convenient for us to pick Saturday as a date to mark World Sickle Cell Day. And for Saturday, we are tying our theme for the day in line with the Black Lives Matter, because we feel at this point it's very crucial to get our voices out there. And our theme is addressing the racialized face of sickle cell, and we will be looking at disproportionate access to healthcare, disproportionate access to employment, and disproportionate access to education for sickle cell communities. So it's going to be a global space. We have two of our speakers present here. They will be speaking around parties tomorrow. And we're also going to be joined by some other speakers as well. And of course, we're still trying to get the Colors of Sickle Cell initiative that, reaches out to non-affected community, which is a fashion show, music, and all of that to happen at the start between 1 and 2, while, the main sickle cell education awareness segment, happens, between 2 and 4 thereabouts. So we're all excited. Everybody's working so hard.
Same here.
For Saturday. So we can't wait for this to happen. And you see, for me, I feel kind of touched because of the theme particularly. And because of my research, I would have found some of these very valid points, and partly the reason why, we're tying it in, because we have a basis to have that conversation. And if you look at history, I know if I press Dr. Dada and Dr. Tomia's button now, we wouldn't leave this show today. If we look at history, we've experienced, racism until today. So what we're trying to say out there is sickle cell is not a Black disease. It is not a Black condition. It is not contagious. It is an inherited disorder. It can happen to any race regardless. We know we suffer the highest burden. However, it can happen to an Irish person whose child gets married to somebody, that is a carrier. There could be a carrier gene in their generation, and there could be a full-blown sickle cell down the line. So it's important for people to know sickle cell is beyond race. And when we begin to think that sickle cell is beyond race, then the government will begin to realize that they need to invest more resources into sickle cell education, awareness, public health promotion, and of course, precision treatment and medication. Thank you very much. So
And
looking forward
we will make sure that we follow up on that message for you as well, to make sure that everybody hears that we need to raise more funding for sickle cell. We need to have more, precision treatment, like you said. And in the Western world, there has to be a bit more, people have to be a bit more sensitive to the fact that it cuts across. It's not just people of African descent. Now, we've overrun the show. Even though, we could go on and on and on and on. It's fantastic having you guys on. I've learned a lot today. And I hope that we can have you guys on either together or at different times at some point later on in the future. And it's been fantastic having you on. You have a nice evening, everyone, and see you again some other time. We'll be back right after this message.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been a pretty interesting evening having those wonderful women, on the show talking about the sickle cell disease. And like you heard, it cuts across. It's not a Black people thing. It can affect anybody, Caucasian, Arab, name it, Chinese, So there needs to be a bit more awareness. Everybody needs to know their genotype. If you don't know, go and do a test, find out. At this point in time now that you have the pandemic, it is of more importance to actually know, what your health status is. So you need to know the basics. And like the doctors said over there, it's important for you to know your genotype. Knowing your genotype prepares your mind. You can actually make a conscious decision to either still go ahead with it with your partner or not. There's nothing wrong with having the sickle cell disease. You're still human. People come up with diseases even after they're born. So it's not a death sentence. And there's great inroads being made in terms of research, both for medication and for the surgical aspects of it, which is stem cell and the bone marrow and all that. So World Sickle Cell Day, we wish you a fantastic day on Saturday. Have fun, everybody, especially the Sickle Cell Society of Ireland and all sickle cell societies all over the world. Now, we want to remind you that on the formerradio.com website, we have a COVID-19 tracker. Everybody knows that the COVID-19 is still on and people are still dying from it. So you still need to be careful. You still need to protect yourself, maintain a social distance, 2 meters. Keep your hands to yourself. You don't necessarily have to wear gloves all the time. Make sure you put on a mask, a face mask if you're going into a congested place. You're going to be in the midst of people and all that. And try and be safe and keep other people safe as well, by maintaining the social distance. And don't go out if you don't need to, really. Just try and stay safe, everybody. You can go onto the formerradio.com website, scroll towards the end. There's a red button, it's titled Help. You click on it. You see the COVID-19 tracker pop up. It doesn't take your personal information. It's just us trying to do our own little bit to support the frontline, staff who are putting their lives on the line every day and trying to save the lives of the entire world. Stay safe, everybody. We've had a great evening, and you have a great evening too. And we'll see you on Sunday, 4 p.m. as usual. And we'll let you know who the special guest is for Sunday. Have a fantastic evening, everybody, and sayonara.